We've been taught that history is a straight line, a steady climb from stone tools to smartphones. But what if that's a lie? From 500-year-old medical blueprints that look like 3D scans, to Roman glass built with nanotechnology, and stone fortresses cut with laser-like precision, the evidence is everywhere. We aren't the first high-tech civilization to walk this earth. We are just the most recent. Today, we reveal 10 artifacts that officially shouldn't exist. Objects that don't just challenge history, they break it. Let's start our journey in the year 1507. Imagine a dimly lit basement in a hospital in Florence. The air is cold, heavy with the scent of vinegar and herbs used to mask the smell of decay. Amidst this grim setting, a man in his 50s, with a long flowing beard and eyes that seem to pierce through reality, is hunched over a wooden table. This is Leonardo da Vinci. But he isn't painting the Mona Lisa. He is holding a scalpel. In an era where the human body was considered a sacred vessel that should not be disturbed, Leonardo was performing secret, illegal dissections. He was obsessed with one question: how does the machine of man actually work? What he produced over the next few years wasn't just art, it was a lost medical revolution. For over 300 years, his anatomical journals were hidden away, lost to the public eye. Had they been published during his lifetime, the entire history of human medicine would have been rewritten. Take, for example, his study of the heart. At the time, doctors believed the heart was a spiritual furnace or a simple muscle that warmed the blood. Leonardo looked at it through the eyes of an engineer. He was the first human to describe the heart as a 4-chambered pump. He drew the coronary arteries and the vascular system with a precision that borders on the supernatural. But here is where it gets truly impossible. Leonardo noticed a specific detail in the aortic valve, a subtle swirl in the blood flow. Using his knowledge of fluid dynamics, he predicted that these vortices, or tiny whirlpools of blood, were what caused the heart valves to close properly. This wasn't just a lucky guess, it was advanced physics. Modern medicine didn't actually prove this vortex theory until the year 1968, over 450 years after Leonardo drew it in his notebook. His genius didn't stop at the heart. He was the pioneer of what we now call exploded views in engineering. If you look at his drawings of the human shoulder or the skull, he doesn't just show you the surface. He peels back the layers. He shows the bones, then the ligaments, then the deep muscles, and finally the surface tissue. He was visualizing the human body in 3D slices centuries before the invention of the CT scan or the MRI. He even documented the effects of aging on the human body. Leonardo performed the world's first recorded autopsy on a man who claimed to be 100 years old. In his notes, he described vessels that had become furrowed and withered, the first ever description of atherosclerosis, or the hardening of the arteries. Again, this was a medical discovery that the rest of the world wouldn't catch up to for centuries. Why is this a lost technology? Because Leonardo was treating the human body as a biological machine. He applied the same logic to a human arm as he did to a catapult or a crane. He drew tendons like tension cables and bones like structural levers. But here's the tragedy. Because Leonardo was so far ahead of his time, and because he feared the church's reaction, he never published these findings. They remained in private collections, buried under dust, while millions of people died from medical ignorance over the next 300 years. We often wonder what lost technology looks like. Sometimes it's not a physical machine. Sometimes it's a level of understanding, a blueprint of our own souls that was simply too advanced for the world to handle. Leonardo da Vinci didn't just see the world differently, he saw into the future. And as we look at his yellowed pages today, we realize that we didn't invent modern anatomy, we simply rediscovered it. Leaving the genius of da Vinci behind, we travel across the Atlantic and climb 11,000 feet into the Andes Mountains of Peru. Here, standing as a silent sentinel above the city of Cusco, is a structure that defies every law of primitive construction we've ever been taught, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. When the Spanish conquistadors first arrived here in the 16th century, they didn't believe humans built this. They were convinced it was the work of demons or giants. Why? Because the sheer scale of the engineering was and still is beyond comprehension. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are built from massive blocks of limestone and andesite. Some of these stones are over 9 meters tall and weigh more than 120 tons. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to about 80 modern cars stacked into a single block. But the weight isn't the mystery. The mystery is the fit. These stones are not just stacked, they are carved into complex three-dimensional interlocking shapes. They curve, they twist, and they lock together like a massive jigsaw puzzle. And they fit so perfectly that 500 years later, you cannot slide a single human hair or a razor blade between them. There is no mortar, no cement, no glue, just stone against stone, held together by nothing but the perfection of their geometry. How did a civilization that supposedly didn't have the wheel, iron tools, or draft animals move these giants across miles of rugged mountain terrain? And more importantly, how did they carve them? If you look closely at the corners, you'll see something chilling. The stones don't look like they were cut with chisels. They look like they were softened. They have rounded edges and bulges that look like pillows being pressed against each other. It's almost as if the Incas knew a way to turn solid rock into a clay-like state, mold it into place, and then let it harden back into granite. Geologists have searched for signs of heat or chemical treatment, but the results remain inconclusive. Some theories suggest they use solar mirrors to focus intense heat, while others point to local plant extracts that could melt the stones. But even with our modern diamond-tipped saws and laser-guided cutters, we struggle to achieve this level of flow in stonework. Think about the logistical nightmare. If you're carving a 100-ton stone to fit perfectly against 5 other irregular stones, you can't just test the fit. You can't lift it up, see where it rubs, and put it back down 20 times. You have to get it right the first time. This implies a level of advanced 3D modeling and spatial mathematics that we usually associate with computer-aided design, or CAD. And then, there is the question of survival. This region is a major earthquake zone. While modern Spanish buildings in Cusco have collapsed multiple times over the centuries, the walls of Sacsayhuaman haven't moved an inch. Their interlocking, dancing geometry allows the stones to vibrate during a quake and then settle back into their original perfect position. It is an earthquake-proof technology that is literally built into the weight of the mountain. Is it possible that the Incas inherited this technology from an even older, lost civilization? Or did they possess a profound understanding of geology and physics that we have simply lost the ability to understand? Sacsayhuaman is more than just a wall. It is a riddle in stone. It stands as a reminder that the primitive past may have been more high-tech than our modern world. It challenges our ego, forcing us to admit that thousands of years ago, people were doing things with gravity and granite that we still can't explain today. As we stare at these seamless giants, we have to wonder, what other laws of nature did they know that we have forgotten? We now descend from the high Andes and travel to the blistering sands of Saqqara, Egypt. In 1936, inside the mastaba of Prince Sabu, dating back to roughly 3000 BC, archaeologists unearthed an object that sent shockwaves through the engineering world. It is known as the Sabu disc. At first glance, it looks like a strange stone steering wheel. It's a circular vessel, about 60 centimeters in diameter, with 3 thin, curved lobes folded toward a central hub. But here is the problem. This object is 5,000 years old. In 3000 BC, Egypt was supposedly in the early Bronze Age, using simple tools of stone and copper. Yet the Sabu disc is a masterpiece of precision engineering that defies its era. Let's look at the material. It's carved from a rock called schist. For those who aren't geologists, schist is a metamorphic rock that is notorious for being flaky and fragile. It splits into thin layers like a dry biscuit. To carve a solid block of schist into a perfectly symmetrical disc with lobes as thin as a few millimeters is an absolute nightmare. Even with modern high-speed CNC water jets, the risk of the material shattering is immense. So, how did a craftsman 5 millennia ago achieve this without power tools? But the how is only half of the mystery. The real question is, what is it? Mainstream Egyptologists suggest it's a ceremonial bowl, or perhaps an ornate fruit stand. But if you show this to a fluid dynamics engineer, they won't see a bowl. They see a propeller. They see an impeller. The design of the Sabu disc is eerily similar to a modern high-speed aeration turbine, the kind we use in chemical vats or water treatment plants to mix liquids and gases. The three lobes are angled in a way that suggests they were meant to move through a fluid. When you spin a model of this disc in water, it creates a powerful vortex. Now, this leads to a disturbing possibility. If the Sabu disc is a technical component, then it's just one part of a larger, missing machine. You don't build a high-speed turbine to sit on a shelf, you build it to function. But where's the rest of the machine? Where was the power source? Some researchers believe the Sabu disc might be a copy. Imagine a pre-dynastic culture possessed advanced metal machinery. Over time, the machines broke down, but the memory of them remained. Perhaps Prince Sabu's craftsmen tried to replicate a sacred, high-tech artifact of the gods using the only material they had, stone. This would explain why it's made of schist, a material totally unsuitable for a high-stress mechanical turbine, but perfect for a prestigious, non-functional replica. If the Sabu disc is indeed a stone copy of a forgotten technology, it breaks history in the most profound way. It suggests that before the pharaohs there was an era of high-tech knowledge that was completely wiped from the record, leaving behind only strange stone echoes. Could the ancient Egyptians, or someone before them, have mastered fluid dynamics? Did they have pumps? Did they have advanced chemistry? Or are we simply looking at a very strange fruit bowl and overthinking it? Whatever the truth may be, the Sabu disc sits in the Cairo Museum as a silent challenge. It is an aerodynamic riddle carved in stone, a ghost of a technology that officially shouldn't have existed for another 4,000 years. It forces us to ask, was our past much more industrial than we were ever told? We live in a world that is crumbling. Look around our modern cities. Bridges built in the 1960s are already showing dangerous cracks. Skyscrapers are designed with a lifespan of barely 50 to 80 years. Even our best marine infrastructure struggles to survive a century against the relentless corrosion of salt water. We have the internet, we have satellites, but we seem to have lost the secret to building things that last. Now, contrast that with the Pantheon in Rome. It features the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, and it has stood for nearly 2,000 years in a major seismic zone. Or look at the ancient Roman harbor piers in the Mediterranean. They have been hammered by waves for 20 centuries, and instead of eroding, they are actually stronger today than the day they were built. For decades, modern engineers were baffled. They thought the Romans were just lucky, or that they used a secret ingredient we couldn't identify. But a few years ago, we finally cracked the code, and what we found was a lost technology of self-healing materials that makes our modern chemistry look primitive. The secret lies in something called lime clasts. For a long time, scientists looked at these tiny white chunks in Roman concrete and thought they were the result of poor mixing, just a sign of sloppy work. But they were wrong. Those white chunks were the key to immortality. The Romans used a process called hot mixing. By using quicklime at extreme temperatures, they created a chemical environment where these lime clasts remained reactive inside the solid concrete. Now, here is the break in history. When a crack forms in a Roman wall, as all concrete eventually does, water seeps in. But instead of rusting steel rebar or widening the gap, the water hits those reactive lime clasts. The lime dissolves, recrystallizes, and literally grows back into the crack, sealing it shut before it can spread. It is a biological response in a geological material. The Romans were building infrastructure that could heal its own wounds. But it gets even more incredible when you look at their seawalls. The Romans mixed their concrete with volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius. When seawater hits this specific mixture, it triggers a rare chemical reaction that grows a mineral called aluminous tobermerite. In modern concrete, seawater is a poison. In Roman concrete, seawater is the catalyst for strength. The more the ocean attacked the piers, the more the mineral crystals grew, reinforcing the structure at a molecular level. They weren't fighting nature, they were using nature to do the maintenance work for them. So how did we lose this? With the fall of the Roman Empire, the trade routes for volcanic ash were cut, and the specialized knowledge of hot mixing died with the master builders. We traded durability for speed. We moved to Portland cement because it's easier to mass produce, but in doing so, we entered the era of disposable architecture. Imagine if we hadn't lost this technology. Imagine a world where our bridges, our dams, and our homes didn't need constant trillion-dollar repairs because they fixed themselves. Roman concrete is a haunting reminder that progress isn't always a forward motion. Sometimes the ancient world had a vision of the future that we are still trying to understand. We travel now to the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a site built during the final dynasties of ancient Egypt. Most visitors come here to see the beautiful astronomical ceilings, but the real mystery lies beneath their feet. Down a narrow, cramped staircase, hidden in a subterranean crypt that was never meant for the public eye, are the reliefs that have sparked one of the most intense debates in the history of archaeology, the Dendera light. The carvings depict Egyptian figures standing around a massive, bulbous object. Inside this bulb, a long, wavy snake stretches from one end to the other. The bulb is supported by a pillar known as a jed, and at its base, a cable-like line leads to a small box where a person is kneeling. If you look at this with the eyes of a priest, it's a creation myth, the snake representing the god Harsamtus emerging from a lotus flower. But if you look at this with the eyes of an electrical engineer, you don't see a flower. You see a Crookes tube. A Crookes tube is an early specialized vacuum tube, the precursor to our modern light bulbs and television screens. The snake looks exactly like a plasma discharge or a filament. The jed pillar looks identical to a high-voltage insulator found on power lines today. And that cable leading to a box, it looks like a power feed. This leads us to a practical problem that mainstream archaeology has struggled to answer for centuries: the mystery of the soodless tombs. Deep inside the Valley of the Kings and temples like Dendera, there are corridors and chambers hundreds of feet underground, decorated with the most intricate, colorful paintings imaginable. To paint these, artists needed light. The standard answer is that they used oil lamps or torches. But here is the catch. There is no soot, no carbon deposits on the ceilings, no smoke damage on the masterpieces. Some suggest they used a system of copper mirrors to reflect sunlight from the entrance, but optical physics tells us that after just a few reflections, the light would lose over 90% of its intensity. In the deepest chambers, it would be pitch black. This has led fringe researchers to a radical conclusion. Did the Egyptians have a form of wireless or chemical electricity? In the late 20th century, several engineers built working models based on the proportions found in these reliefs. When they applied a high-voltage charge, the tubes emitted a haunting purple glow, a cold light that produced no heat and no smoke. It was enough to illuminate a dark room perfectly. Of course, the big question remains: where were the batteries? Where were the generators? While we have found the Baghdad battery in Iraq, we haven't found a massive power grid in Egypt. But we must remember that copper was the most recycled metal in the ancient world. If they had wiring or generators, they would have been melted down and reused long ago, leaving only the stone records of their existence. Is the Dendera light a record of a lost electronic technology? Or is it a profound coincidence of art mimicking future science? If it's real, it means the enlightenment of humanity happened thousands of years earlier than we thought, only to be buried and forgotten in the dark crypts of the desert. As we stare at these carvings, we have to ask ourselves, were the ancients working in the light of the gods, or were they simply using a technology that we are only now starting to understand? For centuries, the sagas of the Northmen were filled with stories that seemed like pure fantasy. They spoke of a magical sunstone, a mysterious crystal that allowed Viking navigators to locate the sun even when the sky was choked with thick fog, or after the sun had already dipped below the horizon. Historians dismiss these stories as poetic myths. After all, how could a simple rock act as a high-tech navigational sensor 1,000 years before the invention of the magnetic compass in Europe? But in 2013, the myth became a scientific reality. In a 16th-century shipwreck discovered near the Channel Islands, archaeologists found a strangely shaped translucent crystal. It wasn't a gemstone. It was a piece of Iceland's spar, a transparent variety of calcite, and it was found alongside navigational instruments. To understand why this artifact breaks history, we have to look at the physics of light. The North Atlantic is a place of brutal storms and constant cloud cover. For a Viking longship in the open ocean, losing the sun meant certain death. You couldn't tell direction, and you couldn't stay on course. Iceland's spar has a unique property called double refraction. When light passes through the crystal, it splits into two separate beams, but there's a secret hidden within that light: polarization. Even when the sun is hidden by clouds, the light in the sky is still polarized in a pattern centered on the sun. By holding the Sunstone up to the sky and rotating it, a Viking navigator could observe the two beams of light. When the two beams reached the exact same intensity, the stone was pointing directly at the sun. It's a biological optical interface. It essentially allowed the Vikings to see the invisible lines of the Earth's atmosphere. Experiments have shown that this stone is accurate to within 1 degree. It works in heavy fog, and it even works for up to 50 minutes after the sun has set, by picking up the polarized light of the twilight sky. This explains how the Vikings were able to maintain such incredible precision on their voyages from Scandinavia to Greenland and eventually to North America, long before anyone else dared to leave the site of the coast. Think about the implications. This wasn't magic, it was an advanced application of optical physics. The Vikings may not have known the word polarization, but they understood the mechanics of light better than the most learned scholars in Paris or Rome at the time. While the rest of Europe was struggling with basic cartography, the Vikings were using crystals to decode the sky. This lost technology proves that an ancient culture doesn't need computers or lasers to achieve high-tech results. They just need a deep, intimate observation of the natural world. The Sunstone is a reminder that the line between myth and science is often just a matter of time. It forces us to ask, what other magical objects in our legends are actually pieces of lost technology waiting for us to find the right lens to see them? In the year 673 AD, a massive Arab fleet surrounded the city of Constantinople, the crown jewel of the Byzantine Empire. The city was on the brink of collapse. But as the enemy's ships closed in, the Byzantines unleashed a weapon that seemed to defy the laws of nature. From the bows of their ships, long bronze tubes began to spray a thick, liquid fire. But this wasn't ordinary fire. This substance didn't just burn the wooden ships, it clung to them like living tar. And when the panicked soldiers tried to douse the flames with water, something terrifying happened. The fire burned even brighter. It roared on top of the waves, turning the sea itself into an inescapable inferno. This was Greek fire, the napalm of the Dark Ages. For over 500 years, Greek fire was the ultimate deterrent. It saved the Byzantine Empire from countless invasions and kept the secret of its recipe under the highest level of state security. The formula was divided into parts. One person knew the ingredients, another knew the heating process, and another knew the pressurized delivery system. No single person held the full secret. And it worked. The secret was so well kept that when the empire finally fell in 1453, the formula for Greek fire vanished from the face of the earth. Even today, with all our modern chemical analysis, we still don't know exactly what it was. Mainstream historians and chemists have tried to replicate it for decades. We know it likely involved naphtha, a light crude oil, mixed with resins to make it sticky. But the magical part, the part where it reignites or burns more intensely on water, suggests the presence of quicklime or phosphides. Imagine the technical sophistication required in the 7th century to build the delivery system. It wasn't just a bucket of oil. It involved a complex bronze pump, a furnace to heat the pressurized liquid, and a specialized nozzle. It was, in every sense, a modern flamethrower, invented 1,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. There are accounts of the fire making a roaring sound like thunder as it left the tube, accompanied by thick clouds of smoke. It was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. To an ancient sailor, this wasn't just chemistry. It was the wrath of God in liquid form. The loss of Greek fire is one of the greatest technological tragedies in history. It represents a level of chemical engineering that wouldn't be seen again until the 20th century. It proves that a civilization can possess a superweapon, a pinnacle of scientific achievement. And yet, if the chain of knowledge is broken, that achievement can be erased as if it never existed. Greek fire remains a ghost in our history books, a reminder that we are not the first to master the elements, and that sometimes the most powerful secrets are the ones we fail to protect. We move from the terrifying flames of war to the delicate artistry of a Roman banquet. For decades, a mysterious glass chalice sat in the British Museum, leaving scientists completely baffled. It is known as the Lycurgus Cup, dating back to the 4th century AD. At first, it appears to be a beautiful jade-green glass cup depicting the death of King Lycurgus. But when you place a light source inside the cup, or shine a light through it from behind, something impossible happens. The green glass instantly transforms into a deep, glowing blood red. This isn't just a trick of the light, it's a phenomenon called dichroism. For over a century, the best glassmakers in the world couldn't figure out how the Romans achieved this. Was it a lucky accident, a chemical fluke, or was it something far more advanced? In 1990, researchers finally examined fragments of the glass under an electron microscope. What they found shattered our understanding of ancient history. The Romans had impregnated the glass with particles of silver and gold that were ground down to exactly 50 nanometers in diameter. To put that in perspective, a nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. A single grain of salt is about 1,000,000 nanometers wide. These particles were so small that they were less than 1,000th the size of a grain of salt. This is nanotechnology. At this precise size, 50 nanometers, the gold and silver particles exhibit a physical property called surface plasmon resonance. When light hits these nanoparticles, the electrons vibrate in a way that scatters shorter wavelengths of light, like green, when viewed from the front. But when light passes through the glass, it allows the longer wavelengths, like red, to shine through. The precision required to do this is staggering. If the particles were just a few nanometers larger or smaller, the effect would be ruined. This means the Romans didn't just mix in some gold dust. They had a controlled, systematic way of milling precious metals down to the atomic level and distributing them evenly through the molten glass. Even more shocking is that this cup might not have been just for show. Scientists found that these nanoparticles are highly sensitive to the environment. If you fill the cup with different liquids, like water, oil, or alcohol, the way the light scatters changes. This has led some researchers to wonder, was the Lycurgus Cup an early form of a biosensor? Could it have been designed to detect impurities or poisons in a drink? We are only now, in the 21st century, using these same gold and silver nanoparticles for advanced medical testing and high-speed computing. We call this cutting-edge technology. And yet, a Roman craftsman was doing it in a furnace 1,600 years ago. The Lycurgus Cup is a bridge across time. It tells us that our ancestors weren't just clever with their hands, they were masters of materials science. It forces us to ask, how many other high-tech secrets are hidden in plain sight, disguised as simple works of art? The Romans may have lost their empire, but in this single cup, they left behind a message written in atoms, a reminder that the past was far more quantum than we ever dared to imagine. We now leave the advanced science of Rome and travel to the heart of the ancient Maya civilization, deep within the jungle ruins of Palenque, Mexico. Here, inside the Temple of the Inscriptions, lies a sarcophagus lid that has sparked one of the most incredible and controversial debates in archaeology. The Palenque Astronaut. Discovered in 1952, this massive carved stone slab covers the tomb of Kinich Janab Pakal, a powerful Maya ruler who lived in the 7th century AD. The carving depicts Pakal in a reclining position, surrounded by symbols of the cosmos and the underworld. Mainstream archaeology interprets this as Pakal descending into the afterlife, with the tree of life emerging from his body. But for many, particularly proponents of ancient astronaut theories, this image tells a very different story. They argue that the carving doesn't show a king in the afterlife. It shows a human operating a complex machine, a spaceship. Let's look at the details through that lens. Pakal is shown in a seated, forward-leaning position, his hands seemingly manipulating controls. His feet rest on what looks like pedals. Around his face, there appears to be a breathing apparatus or a helmet with tubes leading away from his mouth and nose. The background features what looks like exhaust flames and complex mechanical elements that resemble an engine or thrusters. Even the tree of life can be reinterpreted as a trajectory of smoke or a rocket exhaust plume. The controversy stems from the immense leap in interpretation. Is it a metaphorical journey to the underworld or a literal depiction of advanced technology? The Maya were brilliant astronomers and mathematicians. They tracked planetary movements with incredible accuracy, and their calendar system was astonishingly complex. But did they possess the knowledge, or receive the knowledge, to construct and operate spacecraft? Mainstream archaeologists strongly refute this astronaut interpretation, emphasizing the rich symbolism of Maya cosmology. They point out that the flames are stylized roots of the cosmic tree, and the controls are traditional Maya sacred imagery. They argue that applying a modern, Western technological framework to an ancient, non-Western artwork is a fundamental misinterpretation. However, even if we accept the traditional interpretation, the level of scientific sophistication implied by Maya astronomy and mathematics is still astonishing. Their understanding of celestial mechanics was profound. The astronaut theory simply pushes that understanding to an extreme, asking if their abstract knowledge translated into concrete physical technology. The Palenque astronaut doesn't offer easy answers. It challenges us to confront our own biases about what ancient people were capable of. It forces us to ask, is our interpretation of the past too limited by our current understanding of technology? Or are we seeing what we want to see in the shadows of ancient art? Whether Pakal was embarking on a spiritual journey or launching into the stars, this sarcophagus lid remains a powerful symbol of a lost civilization's complex view of the universe. It serves as a reminder that the stories our ancestors told, etched in stone, might hold secrets about technology and our place in the cosmos that we are only just beginning to decipher. Our final journey takes us high into the Bolivian Andes, to an altitude of nearly 13,000 feet. Here, amidst the barren landscape, lies the enigmatic site of Puma Punku. This isn't just a ruin, it's a colossal, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle made of some of the hardest stone on Earth, and it challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient construction. Puma Punku is part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, dating back to perhaps 500 to 1000 AD. But the specific techniques seen here are what truly defy explanation. The site is strewn with massive blocks of red sandstone and incredibly hard diorite. Some of these diorite blocks weigh over 100 tons. But the sheer weight isn't the primary mystery, it's the precision. Many of the stones at Puma Punku are cut with a level of accuracy that rivals modern industrial machining. We see perfectly straight edges, incredible flatness, and internal 90-degree angles that are almost impossible to achieve without power tools. There are drill holes so perfectly cylindrical that they look like they were made by a modern drill press, not by Stone Age hammers and chisels. But the most famous pieces are the H blocks. These are intricate, interlocking stones shaped like the letter H, with complex, uniform depressions and perfectly carved slots. They are designed to fit together, almost like a giant set of Legos, to create a modular, earthquake-resistant structure. Think about the challenge. Diorite is one of the hardest igneous rocks on the planet. It's almost as hard as granite, second only to diamond. Working with diorite today requires tungsten carbide tools, diamond saws, or even laser cutters. The Tiwanaku people supposedly only had stone and copper tools. How did they achieve such micro-tolerances? How did they create perfectly flat surfaces that reflect light like a mirror? Mainstream archaeology suggests that the Tiwanaku used simple abrasive tools, like sand and water, rubbed against the stone for countless hours. But this theory struggles to explain the uniform depth of the drill holes, the perfect internal 90-degree corners, and the sheer volume of perfectly cut stones. Abrasive grinding tends to round edges, not create razor-sharp corners. The alternative explanation is that they possessed a lost technology, a form of tool or technique that allowed them to machine stone with incredible precision. Was it a chemical process that softened the rock temporarily? Was it an unknown form of acoustic levitation to move the blocks? Or did they have knowledge passed down from an even older, more advanced civilization? Puma Punku doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient engineering. It forces us to rethink the very definition of primitive. This was a culture that didn't have a written language or the wheel, yet they were building structures with a precision that would be difficult for a modern factory. The site also raises the question of lost purpose. Much of Puma Punku lies in ruins, as if a cataclysmic event violently scattered its components. Was it a temple, a port, or perhaps a massive unknown machine? As we stand amidst these silent, broken giants, Puma Punku becomes a monument to our own ignorance. It is a powerful reminder that there are chapters in human history, written in stone, that we are still desperately trying to translate. What other secrets lie buried beneath the Andes, waiting for us to catch up to their forgotten brilliance? The artifacts we've seen today prove that the past is far more than just dust and primitive tools. It's a mirror reflecting a lost version of ourselves. If we want to avoid becoming just another impossible mystery for the future, we must never stop questioning. So, which of these glitches in history shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep exploring the hidden side of our world. Until next time, stay curious. The truth is still out there, waiting to be found.